ॐ शन्नो मित्रः शं वरुणः शन्नो भवत्वर्यमा शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यश्छन्दसा मृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया आस्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासं शरीरं मे विचर्षणं जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरिविश्रुवं ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिव कीर्तिः पृष्ठं गिरेरिव ऊर्ध्वपवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमृतमस्मि द्रविणगुं सवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इत्थशङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः आप्यायन्तु मम अङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुः श्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्यां मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्तु अनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्माः ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः वाङ् मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्म एधि वेदस्य मानि ईस्थः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनाधितेन अहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं नो अपि वातय मनः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यो ब्रह्मानं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तगुंहदेवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तं तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यानस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यं निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यत्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्र्यचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये यस्यैव स्फुरणं सदात्मकम् असत्कल्पार्थकं भासते साक्षात् तत्त्वमसीति वेदवचसा यो बोधयत्याश्रितान् यत्साक्षात् करणात् भवेन्न पुनरावृत्तिर्भवाम्भोनिधौ तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नानाच्छिद्रघटोदरस्थितमहादीपप्रभाभास्वरं ज्ञानं यस्य तु चक्षुरादिकर्णद्वारा बहिस्पन्दते जानामीति तमेव भान्तमनुभात्येतत्समस्तं जगत् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये देहं प्राणमपीन्द्रियानपि चलां बुद्धिं च शून्यं विदुः स्त्रीबालान्दजडोपमास्त्वहमिति भ्रान्ताभृशं वादिनः मायाशक्तिविलासकल्पितमहाव्यामोहसंहारिणे तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये So if we look at this Shastra, Vedanta Shastra, the Veda Shastra, we find that the Veda is totally concerned with truth, the analysis of truth, and the method of understanding the truth about life, about ourselves, what's going on. This is what Vedas are all about. So in that sense, we can say that the Vedas, and culminating in the Vedanta, Vedasya antaha iti Vedantaha, is the last word on truth. It's the ultimate word on the discovery of the truth, the nature of the truth, the method of finding the truth, all of the concern with truth. And so, so this means that when we say the last word on truth, we mean that this cannot be shaken. By its very nature, it cannot be shaken. Not as though it's one of the qualities of not shakeable, but the very nature, the very swarupa of the truth is that once it is known, it cannot be shaken. It's not possible to be done so. So, if we look at the lesser attempts at finding the truth, the best example we can find is that of science. So the science also is concerned with finding truth. So very much so. So in terms of, as we have seen in the last few classes, the repeatability of it is all about finding truth. So for instance, if you were to look at the recent pandemic, science meaning all the medical science, physical science, biological science, all put together, they are very concerned with finding it. What is the reason for it? What's the nature of it? How do we find the pandemic source? It's all about truth and finding out about repeatability. That it can be, it sometimes can be random, but we don't want randomness. We want something with certainty. And so this is all about it. However, the scientific search for truth is still not the last word on truth. Not the last word. So as we have seen also, this is an important concept for us to really understand. This is the nature of what is called Maya Anirvachaniyam. So you may find truth to be prevalent, but there's always some uncertainty. There is an X factor at the end. The entire equation is solved, but there is an X factor which we don't know. And so these are the X factors, like what is the ultimate truth about particles. And so in that sense, the quest for truth in science is still relative. So as scientists develop better and better method of explaining the reality, they can be better still later on. So this is why the Newtonian laws of physics and so on were accepted, and they said, yeah, this is the one it is, action and reaction and all of those kinds of things. And then Einstein comes along and just completely uproots everything. It's very possible, I would say even probable, that some of the explanations of Einstein would be made better by some more insight. And this is going to go on. There's no end to it. Because, and this is one part of it, is that they are all missing the self-existing part of the Atma. So until that is done, it will be a relative science, not an absolute science. So the absolute science is Vedanta. Why? Because there is nothing better than truth, the swarupa of truth. And so this has been going on for, so these kind of teachings can be done in any yuga and any, so when Krishna was teaching, he was talking about exactly the same thing. When Vasishtha was teaching to Rama, Exactly the same thing. Same word, same concepts. No, it's not better that Einstein is better than Newton. Nothing like that. It's the same because it is the last word on truth. Now, the reason I'm saying that is for a particular purpose, which is the following. Now, this brings out the nature of Brahma Sutras. Okay. Now, it turns out that each one of us, in a manner of speaking, is in a prison. All of us are in our own individual prisons. Some common prison and some peculiar prison, which is personal to each one of us. And the prisons are somewhat different. Like, for example, even in our worldly prisons, there are prisons for lesser crimes. I suppose you are allowed television. I don't know, I'm just guessing. You're allowed television and you're allowed to work out and play volleyball and basketball outside, and there's sun and you're served good meals. It's just that you cannot go outside the periphery. So this is one of the good prisons. Or you can have a prison where you may have committed some serious murders, serial murders, and you are kept isolated from everybody. And there's a toilet seat, and there's no cushion to sleep. So there's some bad prisons and goodness, but everybody is in a prison. So similarly in our lives also, we may have some good prisons, some bad prisons, but we are all in a prison. All in a prison means that we cannot be totally free. We don't seem to be totally free, and we have already concluded and we have gotten used to the idea that we are in a prison. We may not formally say I am in a prison. If you walk around and say, we just had a class and the teacher told us we are all in a prison, I think you'll be laughed off. Better not say it to anybody. So we may not feel we are in a prison, but if you really analyze it, we are fully enclosed. And the biggest prison we are in is the need for food. Let's see how independent you are. If you want to argue with somebody, let's do this and say, you are under the spell of hunger. You have to eat the food. And somebody can say, no, I can go. How long can you do that? Not long. As soon as, I remember in India, this was so funny, we will, in the house, we would be having breakfast, my mom and dad, when I would go visit them from the US, and all of a sudden the presence of domestic help became interesting because we don't have domestic help in the US. We just cook our own food and so on. But the moment, as you know, I'm not telling you anything new, you go to India and you find there is the importance of the domestic help for cooking, cleaning, etc. So I remember in the breakfast time, we'll be having nice breakfast, porridge and whatever, paratha, dahi, etc. And while we're doing it, the cook will come and to ask my mother, what should we do for lunch? And I found it was very funny that have hardly finished our meal just now, we are in the middle of it, and he's already asking for what is going to do for lunch. But that's the way it is, prison, because if you don't eat for another 4 or 5 hours, the whole household will say, what happened? Where's the food? Prison. Now comes Brahma Sutra, Vedanta, culminating in Brahma Sutra. And it says, and so before I do that, When we say we are in the prison, part of the reason that we feel we are in the prison is that I am guilty. Guilty of what? I am not sure what I am guilty of, but I must be guilty because I am in the prison. Nobody is put into the prison without being guilty. So you've already concluded that we are some kind of we deserve to be in the prison. There is nothing else you can do. This is what life is all about. So you feel guilty. You don't feel, unless you are a Christian and you're saying this is the original sin. The original sin was that you were born through a sexual contact. This is the original sin. So there is, you are guilty of the sin that I never really committed, and that some power like Christ, etc., will release you from it. So they have their own peculiar concept of being guilty, and we don't have that in India, but still you feel that we are all the same. We are in the prison, and then it must be because I'm guilty of something. So at this point, Brahma Sutra comes along and says, wait. Did you know you are not guilty of anything? And you should set yourself free. To which our answer is, what? What are you talking about? How can I get out of the prison? And whatever it is, the guilty, etc., I'm guilty. You just leave me alone. And at the very most, I may enjoy some moments of playing volleyball outside in a prison and watching television and so on. But I'm okay. I'm just all I want to do is to be in a better prison. But the fact that I'm in the prison is not to be argued with me. This is the way I am. Brahma Sutra says, no. You don't deserve to be in the prison. You are not guilty of anything. And let me show you how. This is something like, we hear these cases every day. In fact, this line of thinking it was triggered by, I was just not watching, I don't watch any television, but I see on the internet some news that flashed by that there were 3 people who were wrongly imprisoned in the New York State prison system for several years. I think it was like 15 to 20 years. Until some kind lawyer and the police department discovered, and this happens every now and then you hear about this, especially with this new DNA methodology. They have really found that a lot of wrong people were convicted and imprisoned and sometimes even hanged. And because of the DNA evidence, this was wrongly connected. So they discovered that. So in this case, I don't think it was a question of DNA. They found out that the prosecutor in New York had withheld some very important evidence. So as a result, they were wrongly accused. Now in this particular case, there's a slight difference because these people who were wrongly accused knew that they were not guilty. So there is a difference there. But in our case, we're not sure about what my guilt is, but I am comfortable or reasonably uncomfortable in the prison system. This reminds me when we first met Swami Dayanandji. And so he came to the US because Swami Chinmayanand could not come because of some passport problems with Sanjay Gandhi. So he sent Swami Dayanand at the last minute, and that's how we We were actually initially disappointed that Swami Chinmayananji could not come. I had signed up for a summer camp in Arcata with Swami Chinmayananji, and at the very last minute we were told that he cannot come. So we were looking at a substitute, and it turns out that in terms of the method of study and the detailed study, I gravitated to Swami Dayanandji because Swami Chinmayanand was not here all the time, and so we asked him to come here for 2 years. Anyway, that's a separate story. But I remember asking Swamiji, after he's been there a couple of times and he came back to the US, he says, so how do you feel about US? And in fact, people in India were asking the same thing. Swamiji, you know, the United States looks like a Swargaloka, and tell us how it is. Yes, Swamiji said to them, and he was relating that concept, that conversation to us, and saying, you know, I find the Indians in India to be uncomfortably unhappy. And what I found in the US was they were comfortably unhappy. So he says, but everybody is in a sense of prison. So anyway, going back to our response to Vedantic spiritual knowledge, which says, no, you're not guilty, I'll prove it to you. And we said, no, it's just, don't prove it to me. All I want is a little better prison. I just want to be comfortably unhappy. I don't want to be uncomfortably unhappy. That's all I want. And many of the religious practices also say the same thing. Really, don't worry about being totally free. We'll give you relatively free. And so what you do is you do all these kinds of things, like you work in the prison and you are a model prisoner. And if you become a model prisoner, then the next prison that you get will be better for you. So exactly the next life will be a better prison. And not according to Vedanta, because all these Swargalokas are also a prison. There is envy, there is jealousy, it all happens. So you need to be free now, and we'll tell you how to be so. So really speaking, now to put a cover on this long discussion so far, what Brahma Sutra does is, as I think I've mentioned it to you before also, I remember those words from Swami Dayanandji very well, they ring in my ears, that the Brahma Sutra is the superior set of lawyers that can prove to you that you are not guilty. They've got all the facts which are not immediately visible to you, but if you just follow them, you'll be free. You won't feel guilty. So this is the expert set. This is like the spiritual Supreme Court, whose finer minds have concluded that this person is not guilty. And here's how. Our biggest issue is that we ourselves need to be convinced. This is where the peculiarity comes in. In the case of these prisoners, they know they were not guilty, but nobody else understood that. In our case, even I feel I'm guilty. And Vedanta says, no, you're not. You're not considering all the aspects of it. Please listen to me. This is what Brahma Sutra is all about. And so as we approach the arguments and the logic and the evidence that is presented to us we should be very seriously looking at it and understanding. Because as I said, I think, I believe in this class and the other classes also, that out of all of the blessings that I can get, so this is the Ishvara Kripa, the Shastra Kripa, the Guru Kripa, the most important one is Atma Kripa. So Atma Kripa here means the mind. Because the mind is sitting there very skeptical. Interesting. I kind of like what you're saying, but I have no idea what it is all about. And until I am convinced, I am not going to. This is exactly our problem in life. Is that the biggest thing is that our own doubts. We're very skeptical. The mind tries to be very logical. So this is the big issue. And so here the lawyer is convincing you that, listen, you have not considered this. So then you can say, yes, that is true, I didn't consider that. You haven't considered that. That's interesting. Slowly your mind says, wow, I really didn't know. This is the removal of ajnanam. So that's the background of the Brahma Sutra that we should be very clear about. So here, just in the context of what we have been discussing today about prison and guilt and evidence and so on, a couple of more things and we will pick up the thread from last time. So there are two groups of lawyers that we have to contend with. So, as we have seen before, the Astikas and Nastikas. So the Astikas are those set of lawyers who, so here, just to give you a background on this, so the Brahma Sutra is a set of lawyer-like arguments that are extremely well done. They are very secure in their thinking. That this is the way it is. This is the pramana. From if you see this, then but you have to see it. So it is a very superior set of lawyers, like the Supreme Court, the highest lawyers there are. On the other side, you have other people who say, no, this is not true. Out of those other set of lawyers, there are two segments. One of them is the Astika lawyers and the other one is the Nastika lawyers. The Astika lawyers say, well, the Vedantic arguments, we accept the pramana of Vedas, that they are very superior lawyers and so on. We accept that. Okay? The Nastika says, no, we don't accept it. Who says that they are superior and so on? We can figure it out on our own. But the Astikas say, we accept you. However, they are not saying that you are already free. All they are saying is go to do these things, then you will become free. So that's the Astika lawyers. Okay? And they also come up with arguments why you are not already free. You need to do some things in order to be free. So now we can pick up the thread. So the Nastika lawyers we will deal with later. For the time being, let us deal with the Astika lawyers. And so this, picking up the thread of what we did last time, is all with respect to the Astika lawyers. Okay? So the reason why they do not accept everything that Vedanta says is they have their own shanka. So they have their doubts. We saw the adhyasa shanka. So basically what Vedanta is saying is that you are not guilty. You are already free. You don't realize it because you've made a mistake. There is a basic mistake you are making about viewing the whole thing. So this is what is called adhyasa. So the Astika lawyer says, no, there is no adhyasa. There is no adhyasa. And the arguments about adhyasa are spurious and there is no adhyasa. And so they give 4 reasons that we saw last time about why this adhyasa doesn't apply. The number 1 was, so very quickly reviewing the Shanka and Shanka Samadhanam from last week. So they give four reasons why the adhyasa argument doesn't hold. So we took an example of the rope and snake and said just like you have an adhyasa of rope and becomes a snake and really is not true, similarly is the adhyasa of the Atma and Anatma. So now the Astika lawyer says, no, they don't apply. That is not the same thing. And here's why they don't apply. So he says, why don't they apply? So he says, I'll give you 4 reasons. Number 1, in the case of rope and snake, you have pratyaksha vishayatvam. Pratyaksha vishayatvam means that the whole topic is you see one thing, but really you are seeing something else. So it is all about pratyaksha. It is your own experience. You experience the snake, and yes, in that case the experience of the snake was spurious, and so once the light is shown, then you have the experience of the rope. This is called pratyaksha vishayatvam. Vishayatvam means the subject matter has to do with what you see. And that doesn't apply in the case of Atma and Anatma. Because Atma, as you say, is not even a Vishaya. It is not a Pratyaksha. So the answer to that, I will now give the Samadhanam with each one of them. This is a revision from last week. So the Vedantic, the Brahma Sutra says, no, they are similar. You don't need pratyaksha vishayatvam, you need either pratyaksha or aparoksha vishayatvam. How? Because pratyaksha, all it establishes is, because I see it, therefore it is. Right? That is a pratyaksha. In the case of the Atma, it is called aparoksha. You don't see it to conclude that I am. You are, without seeing it. So that was the whole idea about going to the doctor and saying, am I there or not? This is stupid. Nobody does that, am I there or not? Now what you can go to the doctor, which is another point here, is to say, there is something wrong with me. So there is something wrong with me is the right way of looking at it, but not the fact that I am. In fact, this word aparoksha is a very beautiful one. Very beautiful one. So there are 3 possibilities of your taking things as an experience. So one is called pratyaksha, and the second one is called paroksha. I won't go into the etymology. These are all etymologically very pure. You can derive the names of pratyaksha and paroksha, etc., also from the grammar. But we won't have the time to do that. So pratyaksha means one which is subject to your senses, to be confirmed with your senses. Did you see the person? Yes. Did you hear that noise? Yes. I heard that noise. So hearing, seeing, feel, etc., all of that is called pratyaksha. So this means that it is within the purview of your sense organs is called pratyaksha. But there is also a paroksha truth, not pratyaksha truth. Truth means some experience. There is also a paroksha. So paroksha means what? Paroksha means not within my sense organs, but it is been well established that it is there. Like for instance, you may not have gone to Idaho, state of Idaho. You may not have never gone to Idaho, but you know there is a state of Idaho. Why? Because it's very common knowledge that there is a state somewhere in the northwest which has been designated called the state of Idaho. If you go there, then it will become pratyaksha, but until then it is paroksha. Okay? So these are the two things. What about the Atma? So you can say that everything is either pratyaksha or paroksha. So you say, okay, is San Jose pratyaksha? Yes, it's pratyaksha, it's very close by here. Is your street pratyaksha? Yes. Is the room pratyaksha? Yes. What about Idaho, Arizona, Nevada, New York? Paroksha. All paroksha. Hawaii paroksha. What about the Atma? Is it pratyaksha or paroksha? Then we say it's neither pratyaksha or paroksha. How can you say that? Because everything is either pratyaksha or paroksha. No, because it is something unique. It is neither pratyaksha, means it cannot be visible to you right in front of you. Neither is it aparoksha. It is in fact neither is it paroksha. It is never paroksha from you. Can you ever be paroksha from yourself? No. Therefore, the word aparoksha is used. I guess it could have been used apratyaksha. But apratyaksha means not visible to you. But aparoksha means not only not visible to you, it is very close to you. It is not separate from you. This is called aparoksha. Anyway, I spent some extra time in giving you the distinctions. But going back to the arguments from the Astika lawyer, he says it doesn't apply. And we say, yes, it does. It is aparoksha vishayatvam. It doesn't matter that you have to see it like a rope, but rope is I am, so it applies. Number one. The second one is called agyatatvam or agyanatvam. It can either be one. So the Astika lawyer says, wait a second. You have been saying that the nature of the Atma is always known. It is the very nature of knowledge. It is Swayam Siddhaha, Swayam Jyotihi. Isn't it? So we say, yes, we do say that. Well, the nature of the taking a rope to be a snake has to do with the fact that you don't know the rope. Agyataha, agyanam, agyatatvam, agyanatvam. That doesn't apply to you. It cannot apply to you because you're always the nature of jnanam. So it doesn't apply. So we say no, that objection doesn't hold, because this is exactly like going to the doctor and saying, I am, but I have some doubts about what I am. Do I have the virus or not? I don't know. Is it a flu or is it a serious problem? I don't know. Can you please find out? So it is very possible that you are, because all of these questions cannot come up until you are. But in fact, the questions come up because you are not sure of who you are. So here, really the best example is the 10th man story. The 10th man story is a perfect, it's a beautiful story. And so this rope and snake and the 10th man are the very core examples of Vedanta, which need to be very carefully studied. So why is the 10th man example important here? Because, if that person, does that person know him, that boy who is crying and wailing, does he not know himself? He knows himself. He knows he's 17 years old and he's the son of such and such mother and such father. He's studying with the guru. His name is so and so. He has gotten certain, all of that he knows very well. Despite that, there is an aspect of the context in which he is that he does not know. The aspect of the context is that he expected all the 10 people to have crossed the dangerous river safely, and he forgets to count himself. So similarly, even though he knows 99% of who he is, there is some small thing that he was missing that made him very unhappy. So similarly here also, the fact that, so the ajnanatvam also applies to the Atma. Normally I am very happy, everything is well, I've got a family, I've got friends and house and all that. But there is a certain aspect of myself which I don't know, the fact that I am free. And so it is ajnanatvam, so your objection doesn't apply. Then the third thing is sadrishyatvam. Sadrishyatvam means that the person says, wait, the rope and snake are similar. And so there can be mistakes between one or the other. But Atma and Anatma are completely dissimilar. You cannot make a mistake on one versus the other. So here, if there is a samadhanam, we will say badham. Badham means, yes, I agree with you. Very well done. That's a good objection. I like that objection. Badham. Sometimes Shankara Bhashya will say badham. Badham means good point, but still wrong. What? How can a good point be still wrong? Because it says there are exceptions. There are exceptions, like we saw that in the case of normally everything, the nimitta karanam and upadana karanam are different. The pot maker and the pot are different. The iPhone and I shouldn't say iPhone, I should be promoting Android because I have an Android. So the Android phone, the engineers for the Android phones, Google phone is different from the Google phone itself normally. But there are exceptions, like in the case of the spider and the dreamer. The nimitta karanam and upadana karanam is the same. So one good example in this case is the sky is blue. The sky is blue. How? Because the blueness and the invisibility of the sky are diametrically opposite. Are both dramatically opposite, diametrically opposite. and yet one is taken out for the other. I know that the space cannot have a color, and then the color means that it has some particles, but I mix the two up, so it's possible. So this is not a valid exam. This doesn't apply. Then the last one is, so first one was pratyaksha vishyatvam, second one was ajñātatvam, the third one is sadrishyatvam, and the last one is purva anubhava janyatvam, which says that in order for you to be mistaken that this rope is a snake, you must have been afraid of a real snake before. So we can say no, because you can be afraid of a snake even though it was not real. As in a movie, and these days for some reason I think the television people also, I don't watch much TV except just passing by and eating my food and watching it, this, that or the other. I find the snake is being used lots of times, which is interesting, but anyway, that's a separate matter. So just by looking at the fierceness of the snake on the television can give you goosebumps that really this is not a rope, this is a real snake. It doesn't have to be a real snake for you to create this fear. And so we also find that so the person says, this good argument, that you must have a real snake fear to be afraid of a false snake. But in your case, anatma is always unreal. So how can you be afraid of unreal anatma? So we say the fear of unreal anatma is just like seeing a snake in a movie. It's possible. And when did it begin? It never began. It's been going on forever. One interesting thing in the way this is kind of following and modifying it a little bit just to suit our case, I'm following the methodology of Swami Paramarthananda. And so far I haven't really finished reading all of them. I'm just like 2 or 3 classes ahead on this. But what he's doing is really remarkable. See, normally the way these things are taught is that you take the Sanskritam of the Bhashya and you read the sentences and then you analyze it. Isn't it? That's a normal method. Swami Paramarthananda seems to be using a method where he's using logic before reading the actual text. I hope this works out okay. I think it will. I am very happy about that, but I like to get your confirmation that we haven't finished doing this, will take quite a while for us to do. The reason I'm bringing it up now is this thing called, the word called Naisargikaha. Naisargikaha. This will come in the Bhashya, in the Adhyasa Bhashya. When it comes to, then I will, in fact my methodology will be when we start reading, I will point out the concepts that we had already discussed prior to it, which is now. And so it's just the opposite. I hope it's very effective. And Swami Paramarthananda is using it. I have a lot of confidence that it will be effective. So the word Naisargikaha means Anadi. Means it never began. So because one can say, when did the fear of anatma begin? The fear of anatma never began. It's been there forever. Why? Because there is no beginning of this Shrishti. It is the very nature of the Maya Vasishta Brahman. The very nature of Brahman, the very nature of Ishvara is, so you and I always have been always there in one form or the other. We are of course making a um, a progress in our lives. At least we are attempting to make a progress in our life. So from a micro standpoint, there is some progress. And some devolution also. There is an evolution and there could be a devolution also. Suddenly, if you get very angry, you are a good person, everything is going well, but you can get so angry that you kill someone. What to do? Now what are you going to do? You cannot say, oh, it was a mistake, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done that. The law says you may be sorry, but this was a major thing. You now have to pay for it for several lives. So there is devolution also, but generally speaking, so devolution means that you're going up on a mountain. Once in a while, to go up to the top, you have to go down a little bit, then go up again. But generally there is evolution. So from a micro level there is evolution. At a macro level there is no evolution. This is the way the thing always has been. Ishvara doesn't need to say, oops, I forgot to do this. The creation is perfect as it is. It may have some flow of back and forth, just like we also have it. During the day we are awake, during night we are asleep, then we are again awake. It's manifestation, non-manifestation, but it's always there. Naisargika. So we begin the dialogue with the Astika lawyer by removing his basic objections that the rope snake example doesn't apply. And as we will see, the rope snake example is just a beginning argument. It is not the final argument, which will now begin. We'll begin the final arguments in a minute. So we've done this so far. I have 20 more minutes. Okay, 8:55. I'll go up to 9:15 every time. I think I've decided not to leave that much more time. Okay. So now our dialogue begins. And we already started doing this before. And what it said is that in order for us to conclude the very difficult way of understanding that I am already free, even though I don't believe I am free, the very difficult arguments has to be carefully structured, because you are applying one set of rules which may be appropriate to one set of conditions on another condition where the rules don't apply. This is the problem. So as we saw, that if you conclude the nature of the moon, how far it is, and so on and so forth, you cannot immediately linearly conclude that other things must be like this. So the pakshas are all different. So the paksha is very important. You cannot say that because the paksha applied here, it should also apply there. No. So therefore the paksha of anatma pramana paksha. There is a certain pramana for anatma. Pramana is the sense organs, mind, conclusion, experiences. All of those kinds of things is the pramana for anything. So that pramana for pratyaksha, for anatma and pratyaksha will be the. So the anatma can only appear to you as a pratyaksha, not as an aparoksha. That will come much later on when we understand that the self, myself, is the self of all. Then everything becomes aparoksha. It's a separate thing, that is a jivan mukti. But in the beginning, anatma is just pratyaksha. So my understanding of the analysis of anatma is one thing. It's called laukika. Loke janyaha laukikaha. So laukikaha examples you cannot do in the atma analysis. So the pramanam for laukika experiences I already have. You're given enough equipment to be able to figure that out. But what about atma? So there, just like you have laukika data, we also get the shastrika data, the shruti data. The shruti becomes the pramana, like your pratyaksha pramana is there. They have different sources, but the methodology remains the same. So now we have to look into the shastrika pramana. So for example, in the case of laukika pramana, we saw two important aspects. One is anumana pramana and one is arthapatti pramana. So anumana pramana means that it is based on pratyaksha and by using vyapti jnanam, yatra yatra vannihi tatra tatra yatra vannihi tatra tatra dhumaha. So by doing this, then you apply to the anumanam that the forest is on fire. Why? Because I see smoke. So this is called anumana pramana. And then also there is an arthapatti pramana. And the difference between anumana and arthapatti is that the anumana is based on direct perception, whereas in the arthapatti, you don't have the direct perception of the smoke coming out. Why? Because I think there the example is, the very superior example is this one Swami Paramartha pointed out, Paramarthanandaji pointed out, which is that there was puddles all over. All over. You never saw it, you didn't see the rain falling. What you see is the puddles. So this is a fact. You didn't see the smoke coming out. You didn't see the rain falling. But you see the rain which was already, must have been there. This is called arthapatti. So in the case of laukika, you have arthapatti and you have anumana. Similarly is the case of shruti arthapatti pramana and shruti anumana pramana. Similarly, just like you have laukika, you have shastrika pramana. How? Let's now look into that. So now we proceed into new material about shastrika, and we will begin with arthapatti first. Okay, so we will begin with arthapatti. So here it should be understood that just like you're seeing, you get up in the morning, and in fact it happened to us. It was supposed to be raining last night, but there wasn't much rain. But my wife and I both got up and we said, look, there's puddles on the backyard. So it did rain a little bit. We didn't hear it when we were sleeping. This actually happened last night. as was supposed to. It was somewhat disappointing. It was supposed to be more rain. And I took out all the cushions from the backyards because it might rain. But it didn't rain much, but it rained. There's puddles in the morning. Tables were wet, everything was there. And it was not sprinkler system, it is something heavier. So now here's the thing. In the Laukika Arthapatti Pramana, you see puddles, as I saw puddles this morning. In the Vaidika Pramana, it is the Vaidika Vakyas that are the Pramana. Vaidika Vakya. And not a casual, once in a while Vakya, but consistent, prevalent all over, again and again. And the same one which was there thousands of years ago, which is there today. That pramana, that saying, is the Shruti Pramana, Arthapatti Pramana. So we'll go into about 5 of them, and I think I should be able to, I don't know if I can do all 5, but I'll try to do in the next 10 minutes or so. Number 1, it says that you, the Atma, is neither a karta nor a bhokta. This is the pramana. This is the pramana. This is exactly like you see puddles, because the Shruti says it. It says it's a different way, but this is what the Shruti says, and I have to examine that fact. Then of course we will see how it happens. That's a separate thing. No, so I see puddles, and how it happened is your own conclusion from the rain. Here, at least we should look at the facts. The facts are, number 1, Atma akarta abhokta. Where does it say that? All over. All over, including the Bhagavad Gita, which is of course the 5th Veda. It's, even though it is not Shruti, it is as good as the Shruti, it is a Smriti. One we are much more accustomed knowing. It says, Ya enam vetti hantaram Yaschainam manyate hatam. This is the 2nd chapter, verse number 12. Ya enam vetti hantaram Yaschainam manyate hatam ubhautauna vijanitaha nayam hantina hanyate. So, ya enam vetti hantaram. This means karta. The one who thinks he is the killer, or the one who thinks he is the killed, which is bhokta, both of them are wrong. Because the Atma, na ayam hantina hanyate. It is not possible for it to kill. The Akasha cannot do anything. It is just in the background. And Atma is also just in the background. There is no kartritvam, no bhoktritvam. See this fact. This is number 1. Then number 2. Atma is not a pramata. It is not a seer. It is the basic jnanam behind the seer. All over. Where does it say that? All over. Example is the Mandukya Upanishad. Na antah pragyam, na bahish pragyam, na ubhayatah pragyam, na pragyam, na pragyam. It is the very basis. There is no ta anywhere. There is no doer. It's knower. Shruti Arthapatti Pramana. Third one, Atma Nirvikaraha. Nirvikaraha means there is no change to the Atma. Shruti Vakyas all over. Again Bhagavad Gita. Achedyoyam adahyoyam akledya shoshya evacha nitya sarvagatasthanu achaloyam sanatanaha. And Mandukya in the Drikdishya Upanishad, in Drikdishya Viveka will say, na udeti na astameti esha na vidhim yati nakshayam. Na vriddhim yati nakshayam. There's no change to it. Like the body also changes, this is not like that. Achedyoyam. It cannot be pierced. You cannot pierce the akasha. Cannot burn it. Adahyoyam. You cannot dry it. Cannot wet it. There's no change. Freedom of changes. So, this is number 3. Number 4. Akaranam. Atma is akaranam. So, whenever there is a doer, when there is doership or there is enjoyership, there is a karana for it. So, the doership and enjoyership is a karya, for which there is a karana, there is a cause for this effect. Like for example, you see something and you conclude there is a cause for the conclusion. Why? Because there is some mind, some sense organs and so on. Here there is no cause. Asangoham. Ayam Purushaha. So the Akasha, for example, is disconnected from anything. Even though it looks blue, but it's not. The blueness is not in the sky. It's just the way of looking at it. This adhyasa is not possible. So akarta, abhokta, apramata, and then there is no cause for it. Next one. Parichinnatvam. Parichinnatvam means I am limited. I am here, not there. I am here, I am located to a location at this time. I am only here at this time. So I am different from, I am different from other spaces, I am different from another time, and I am different from all the other things. So, deshataha, kalataha, vastutaha, aham parichinnam. Atma is not parichinnam, it aparichinnam, sarvaktao gataha. There is no point in time when I was not there. This is what the Shruti says. This is the evidence that I have to see. What Shruti says, because I'm arguing with the Astika lawyer. The Nastika lawyer we will deal with later. But this is the Astika lawyer that understands that whatever the Shruti says is the truth. And what the Shruti is saying here is that Atma is aparichinna, limitless. Then the last one is ekatvam versus anekatvam. One versus many. And he says no. Atma is one. So here a lot of the other Astikas don't accept it. Sankhya, Yoga, Purvamimamsa, Vishishta Advaita, etc. But they they look at they look upon, for example, all of the room spaces as being different from space. No, not really, but what I'm saying is that they look at, so the Vishishta Advaita says that the space can be either limited or be unlimited. You can look at it both ways. And Advaita says no. Space, you cannot look at it as a, even if you look at it as a space, it is not enclosed. It is always free. So ekaha. So the bahutvam of the Atma is not accepted. Shruti also says Atma kevalaha sakshi cheta kevalaha. Shvetashvatara Upanishad says eko devaha sarvabhuteshu tishtati or something like that. So no, cannot do that. So these are what are called Shastrika Arthapatti Pramana. It is equivalent to definitely knowing that there are puddles in the street. Having done so, we will now move to Shastrika Anumana Pramanam. So this was Arthapatti Pramanam, and now we will do Anumana Pramanam from a Shastrika standpoint. So that we will do next time. So I'm happy that I was able to complete that section, and with that I just say some prayers and that class will be over. Okay. So let's look at the last 5 verses of Dakshinamurti Stotram. Rahu grasta divankarendu sadrisho maya samachadinat sanmatra karanopasamharnito yo bhut pushuptaf puman pragaswapsamiti prabodha samaye yah pratyabhigyayate tasmai shri gurumurtaye namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Balyadishu api jagradadishu tatha sarvasvavasthasvapi vyavrittasvanuvartamanamahmityantaspurantam sada swatmanam prakati karoti bhajatam yo mudraya bhadraya tasmai Shri Gurumurtaye namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Vishvam Pashyati Karya Karanataya Swaswami Sambandhataha Shishyacharyataya Tathaiva Pitra Putradhyatmana Bhedataha Swapne Jagrati Vaya Esha Purusho Maya Paribhramitaha Tasmai Shri Gurumurtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Bhurambhamsya nalo nilo ambartmaharnartho himam shufpuman ityabhati characharatmakamidam yasyaiva murtyashtakam nanyat kinchana vidyate vimrishatam yasmat parasmat vibhoho tasmai Shri Gurumurtaye namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Sarvatmatvamiti sputikritamidam yasmatamushminstave tenasya shravanat tadaktamananat dhyanat cha sankirtanat sarvatmatvamahavibhuti sahitam syadishwaratvam swataha siddhye tatpunarashtadha parinatam Chaishwaryam avyahatam Ashubhani nirachaste Tanoti shubhasantatim Smritimatrena yat pumsam Brahma tanmangalam param Atikalyana rupatvat Nitya kalyana samshrayat Smartranam varadatvat Cha Brahma tanmangalam viduhu Omkaraschatha shabdascha Dvavetau brahmanah pura Kantham bhitva viniryatau Tasman mangilikau vubhau Om Matha Om Matha Om Matha. Nice to see you all. Wonderful. Do send me an email once in a while to ask, just let me know how you're doing. I would really appreciate it. And again, I'm looking forward to starting a quarterly session on Zoom, so we can actually have a two-way conversation. So one of these days I'll get to it. So that would be nice. Surjit Dixit says, is it incorrect to ask about the source of avidya? Does it not exist at all? Source of avidya. So no, there's no there's no reason for avidya. There's no beginning for avidya. There is no reason for avidya. Like for example, if someone says, I don't know that. Somebody says, I don't know that. Some context is there and you say, I don't know that. It is not logical to ask, why don't you know that? Or it is not logical to ask, when did you start not knowing it? No, there's no logicalness. It is just there. So avidya is a very necessary part of the shrishti, of the whole creation, that it has to be there, part of it. It is the very swabhava. It's the swabhava of Maya. So the nature of Maya itself is avidya. You cannot even say, it's like saying that, how come you didn't know? Hey, I didn't know. Don't ask me how come I didn't know. I never had an opportunity to know, that's all. When did you not know it? It never began. It's always been there. So the Maya is itself, Swami Maheswaranji says it very well. He says the very nature of Maya is a question mark. You cannot have a question mark on top of question mark. So avidya is very natural, it is always there. But the funny part is it can go. It never has beginning, but it has an end. Yeah. Good to see some people that I have not seen recently. Larry Lopez and Srinivas. But maybe you've been there, I just didn't notice it. Good to see you all. And if there's no other questions, then I will take your leave and we will continue this on next week. Okay. Om.